crew rescues the coffee.
May I say one or two things before? We don't really have to do this.
Yeah.
I have left a message with Melissa Fowler, my contact in elementary school, and about a family or two of children for us to help during the Christmas season. And being an NPR person, do any of you, are you familiar with the Moth Radio Hour on NPR? Well, yesterday, if you are so interested, you can go on their website. But yesterday, while in the car, I listened to 3 people, and it's people telling their stories. And it was 3 people who were involved during the Vietnam War. And one was a 17-year, it was a man, but he went back to his 17 years. And when he enlisted, he was in the Delta.
Yeah, Mekong.
And he recounted it. And now it makes goosebumps run up and down that he was a survivor. He was a medic for the corporal who was in charge, who was only 25. And then there was a woman who was from Minnesota, had joined as a nurse. The Army Corps made it clear that she wanted to go to Vietnam, and she did, and she told her story. And then there was a young boy, there was a man who was the oldest of 3 Vietnamese children in the family who were orphaned. And when they were, the Saigon, when they evacuated, he and his 2 younger siblings went to the plane to leave, and he was so joyous because he, as a 7-year-old, said he carried the weight of his brothers on him, and so happy that they were going to be now all taken care of. Well, they wouldn't let him go. He was too old. But a nurse there managed to get him on another Army plane that left for America, and he was an adult, and he told his story. I was just sobbing, as I do sometimes when I listen to those, but it was just a beautiful story, and I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share it with somebody, and I'm emotional now just thinking back to it. But if you have the time or so inclined, you might want to listen to those. It was, we were going back to when I was a junior and senior in high school, listening to that and what was happening around me. So.
And those images that we have of the people who are trying to get out and clinging onto the airplanes.
Oh, Lord.
And those images will stick with us and should stick with us because they are a reminder of how people can suffer and there be no good solutions in the outcomes that are coming. And I heard a story that I'm going to ask you to look at during this coming week. Everything you know about addiction is wrong. It's a TED Talk, and you can get it on YouTube. So you can find it on your, I didn't have the TED Talk podcast, but I could find it on the Google or there. So there was one story in that was very intriguing to me and one that I had wondered about. It said that during the Vietnam War, it became apparent that the American soldiers were heavily addicted to a variety of drugs that they had access to while there, and conditions were terrible. And so they used drugs heavily. And so when they came back home, the expectation was that there would be some terrible problems related to their addiction. But there was not. And the question becomes, what happened and why did they not show the typical problems that we expect? Well, it turns out, and this is brought out in this podcast, that if you are surrounded by people that care for you, and if you come back home, you don't need the drugs anymore. raises the question of, in our current opioid addiction, where have the families and where have the supportive people vanished? Where are they? And what we do in our church is we provide a place for AA and NA. But I read another little thing which made me sort of pause. Welcome, and I think we try to present a place where they are welcome to use, but welcome does not equal inclusion.
Oh,
You
well,
want
that's a
the
little
position?
shocking.
Well, it's really not shocking because we say we're welcome and we provide a place and a warm place and a clean place and a place where they feel safe, where everyone should be able to come. But do we interact? Now, part of that not interacting is because people sometimes when they are in that terrible place don't want to be exposed. They wish to remain anonymous. But there are other ways that we could think of that we can be more inclusive and other ways that we could help. So I was given from the North Carolina Council of Churches. Okay, does that sound like a reputable organization?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Supposed to be. It's got all the key words.
Okay, all right, this is 18 Christian denominations. I'll read these out to you so you can see if you think they're reputable. They are arranged in alphabetical order. African Methodist Episcopal Church, African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, Alliance of Baptist, Christian Church, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, Episcopal Church, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, General Baptist State Convention, Metropolitan Community Churches, Moravian Church in America, Mennonite Church, USA, Presbyterian Church, Reformed Church in America, Reformed Churches of God in Christ International, Religious Society of Friends, you know what that is? Okay. Unity Fellowship Church Movement, United Church of Christ, and last, but probably not least, United Methodist Church. So those people, 23 due to the categories of the following 18 denominations. And their motto is strength in unity, peace through justice. So will you be able to, you'll be able to listen to what they say and not think that it's just some minor group of do-gooders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, one thing we were talking about in providing a place is not really inclusion, and I agree. I was part of the situation I think of AA and NA is the second word, anonymous, so that it is a place where people can come and be anonymous if they so choose. But we could issue invitations, not being there in person, if that intrudes on anonymity, is that the right word? But we could issue, there could be ways of issuing invitations to people who are there to be included in other things like coming to church and Sunday school, and so would that help?
The Christmas Eve service.
Would that help if we did some active inviting?
I think it would.
But doesn't that fall under welcoming rather than true inclusion?
But if they come, then we have an opportunity to be inclusive.
Mhm.
One thing we might could ask them, I think we'd have to figure out the logistics of this, is if they may need childcare during that time. If there are people who are prohibited from coming to that because they don't have childcare.
That's good.
And what that might look like, either outside or in this case. And I mean, I admit I've been guilty of this, not thinking about when they meet, but I think part of that respect is trying to avoid meetings and being in the church during that time as well.
That's the way I had felt too. I didn't want to invade that anonymity. So I didn't, I don't know how to invite, except we could, Lisa is allowed to come. It's my understanding as minister here, she's allowed to come to those meetings and she could issue an invitation, or we could have, you are invited on sheets in this room on the table.
Or they oftentimes have coffee or little snacks and things of that nature, and we could leave that set up and be out of the space.
They have
when they're here.
coffee and they have a designated place to keep everything, so they.
I was thinking, yeah, if we brought goodies sometimes and just left them and said for you.
One time, well, I know it was at least one time, it might have been a couple of times, that I was taking our Christmas angel things, and I was here, pretty early, like 3:30, after work, and I came by and got them, and they were preparing their coffee and things, and I knew one of the ladies that was helping prepare, and we had worked together for a while, and we exchanged pleasantries and talked a while, and I did not want to make her feel, I hope I did not make her feel uncomfortable in any way, because I was pleased to see her. And, as we say, pleased that they're able to use our facility.
So I think those are things that we can pursue that would be easy to do and might be a better way to start the process of inclusion. Or at least to indicate that that's something that is important. So let me read for you a preface to this. In 2018, and I think it was this document was prepared in 2020, 6 North Carolinians a day died due to an unintentional medication or drug overdose. Substance abuse remains a highly stigmatized topic, and one that is not talked about among many faith communities. We just don't talk about it, so that means it's not there. The prevalence of the opioid overdose crisis and the effect the crisis has on congregations calls people of faith to act. So people of faith cannot ignore this. And if you look at what Jesus did, he was always where people needed help. And they used the reference of Jesus even went to people who were dead, like Lazarus. And the thing that he says to the disciples or whoever brought Lazarus out of the tomb was to unbind him. And if we think about the rituals of burial in the Jewish tradition, you would be bound up with linen cloths and wrapped around, and that was a part of the whole process of going through the death. But it kept the body intact and kept it from being smelly and disgusting. But when they brought him out. Jesus said, unbind him, and then he ministered to Lazarus. And the story goes that Lazarus regained life. Well, if you use that as an image, you could say that the person who overuses drugs is bound up, not in chains, but is bound up in the condition of being dependent upon these drugs. And I would bet that almost everyone in here will have a story about how opioids or opioid-type drugs have been used to help people, but inadvertently have caused people to become addicted. And addiction is a word that is frowned on by the people who work with these troubled people, because they say it has a stigma attached to it. Now, what are stigmatized words? What do they convey?
Necessary.
Negativity.
What?
Negativity.
Negativity. So they suggest some other words that could be used which might be less, what's that word, pejorative? Yeah. No wonder I said it right.
That's why I didn't say it.
Say it again, a little louder.
Pejorative.
I've never
I
heard
don't
that
think
word.
I've ever heard that.
I haven't either.
Well, it's like to say the word dirty.
Yeah,
What does the word dirty mean to you?
not just a yard and make face.
Means you need to
That's
take a
an
shower.
honest word.
Filthy.
But if you say he has a dirty mouth,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. He's using expletives. Not,
yeah, and is it because he doesn't know any other words? Or is it just because that's been what he's been around?
a lot of times that's the case.
He grew up with somebody who cussed and stuff.
Yeah,
That's all he would know.
that's
I'm reading a novel that touches on this. It's about a lot more than just opioids, but it's Barbara Kingsolver's latest. And it's, the name of the book is Demon Copperhead.
Really?
And-
Barbara Kinsall?
Yes. It's
Wow.
her latest. And it is set in Southwest Virginia. She lives in Meadowview, and so it's set in the area that she lives. And it starts out basically about opioid effects, or the opioid effects on one family and one child, Demon Copperhead.
Mhm.
And it goes from there. I'm not through the book yet. It's about more than just opioids, but it's based on opioids, overdose, family, impossible, terrible family situations that are a result of opioids and so on. And it is full of dirty language, because that's the language of the culture of the people she's writing about. But it's not negative for Appalachia. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's presenting a different view of Appalachia and the problems of particularly the Southwest Virginia and the whole world. So it's an interesting read. I'm not through with it.
There's an author who's very famous Appalachian writer, Ron Rash. You heard him?
Yes.
And he wrote a book called A World Made Street. And it's all about not opioids, but crystal meth, which is huge around here.
That involves this. Demon gets involved in helping, working, and he's an 11-year-old at the time, working, draining battery acid for a meth lab.
It is a demon. It's a demon.
So we all probably do know someone who used these drugs for legitimate reasons. I had an uncle who had an incurable bone disorder that caused great pain to him. And he was an invalid for the last 25 years of his life. He had his life was constrained to the house where they lived. And he had a cot in the living room and a chair where he could sit, but his life was consisted of that house and the porch primarily. And he was fortunate because his sister was a nurse and she could monitor and give him the drugs that he needed to be able to function at least at a pretty good level. His mind was always free to think and to learn and to grow. But when he would get a shot, he would not talk for a while and his pupils would be dilated and he would be in a different world. And they monitored his illness carefully, and when his illness was abating, which ebbed and flowed, they would reduce the level of the drug that they gave him, and they could crank it back up when he had another bout of sickness. So he was able to live for many years in that condition, but he was able to live a pretty good life. But I will never forget seeing this ritual as a child. They would take a spoon and put water in it. And they had a little burner thing, and they would put the drug, a certain amount, in this water, and it would dissolve and boil, and they would draw it up in the syringe and give him a shot. And it was a normal way of life. But he today probably would be considered to be a medical case, but yet someone who was addicted to that drug.
I have a dear friend who lives in Asheville, and because of the severe pain that she has had in her back for many, many years, she is addicted to an opioid drug that she has to take regularly. And like your uncle, it's reduced at times when she's not in as much pain, and it's elevated at times. But she told me, she said, I hate the fact that I'm dependent on this, but she said, I couldn't be here if it weren't for this drug that keeps me going. She said, the pain is so severe. She said, I couldn't stand it, you know. So.
You know, sometimes it's medical. A lot of times it's recreational.
Well, this is medical.
Right.
This is medical. But she's not happy about the fact that she's on this, but she said for the last 10 years of her life, she has been on this drug. And she said, I'm embarrassed to tell you that, but she said, and hers started many, many years ago. She was an alcoholic. And I kept saying, you're not an alcoholic. She said, Connie, I have lied to you, and you are a dear, dear friend. She said, I have taught school, and when I left school, I went by the ABC store and got a pint. And she said, I would pour it in my coffee cup and drive home from Asheville. Yep. And she was living out here at that time. And so that was before. And then she was doing exercise on a Jane Fonda workout on one of those little bouncy things. And she was twisting and bouncing, threw her back out. And she has not been right since. And that was 30 years ago, I guess.
What oftentimes may start out recreational, then becomes
Yeah,
the
that's what I
addiction.
understand. Yeah.
And then what oftentimes turns out medical becomes the addiction. I know of 2 cases and families I know, and 2 of the family members were hurt. And I do not know what opioid they took, but they took opioids for a head injury and a back injury. And that later became a
Necessary.
constant necessary.
Uh-huh.
Prison time. And I feel sure that when they return from that first, prison time, that they, well, I know they were both back in, doing fine. And one of the family members, when they were arrested, one of the family members said their good friends would not let them alone.
And that points out the fact that if you had support from the community around you and the people that lived with you and you loved, you probably would be able to better withstand the desire to go back and use. And that's where churches conceivably could have an important role as well as family. Because when the Vietnamese soldiers, when our soldiers came back from Vietnam and were surrounded by family and community, they didn't go back to using the drugs. But now, our lives have changed dramatically because we no longer have the family as strong a unit, and the community is somewhat fractured. And instead of having pulling together, what do we tend to do in our society? We tend to emphasize differences, right?
You know,
Point
a lot of this recreational, I think a lot of people that become addicted are psychologically in pain. From sexual abuse, from being in the Vietnam War, et cetera, et cetera. And so when they take their first drink, or they take their first puff of marijuana, or a line of cocaine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the endorphins are released. And they temporarily take that anguish that you feel inside, they take it away.
And they don't know any other way to take away that
They
pain.
don't know any other way.
We think of our generation as we've been mentioning the Vietnam War, but there are so many younger people who have come back from the different Mideast wars.
From Desert Storm, yeah.
Afghanistan. It's very sad.
But it seems like the Vietnam soldiers, we didn't welcome them home
No.
like the big war. I understand. Yeah. Well, I was a baby, but when Daddy came home in 1945, I think there was great. When that war was over, there was great, celebrations and victory gardens and all kind of stuff was going on in the country. That didn't happen with these Vietnam soldiers, and they. I think they've suffered. Maybe they didn't go back to taking drugs they took over there, but the Vietnam soldiers, I think the VA is full of them right now, all over the country, and a lot of them became alcoholics. Now, I don't know if that was a carryover from over there or what they turned to when they came here. Maybe they weren't taking opioids, but possibly turned to alcohol, because I know of a few who are alcoholics and they have struggled.
Well, it seems that that's just another example of a drug that can be abused or overused. And examples of drugs go all the way from coffee. Caffeine is a drug. Tea. Alcohol is a drug.
Sugar.
Marijuana is a drug.
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
I was going to say chocolate, right up there.
They even coined a real word that's used in crosswords and stuff, chocoholic.
Yeah.
It's official.
So we classify in our heads certain drugs as good, like aspirin, right?
Yeah.
Used to be, now it gives you blood clots.
It does. You have to be
Blood clots, hemorrhages.
So we have to think about the differences in drugs and how we classify some drugs as good and some drugs as bad.
I think that one of the latest trends in drugs is the use of psychedelic drugs to treat mental illness.
Schizophrenia.
Now,
Read and
basically,
heard some
the stuff that's in magic mushrooms.
LSD has been used successfully to treat addiction.
And psilocybin, that's what you get from the mushrooms.
So,
This is sitting in my head. Vietnam was in the 60s, and you said when they came back, they didn't stay on drugs. I'm not saying everybody, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a general
Right.
thing. Because they had a support group. And I'm thinking of the difference in the society in the 60s
Yeah.
and to where we are today. Who are your friends? They're here, they're on Facebook, they're on all these things. But where's, that's the beauty of these kinds of groups and why I always have it doesn't matter, as long as you gather, that's the thing, and that's why NA and AA are the way they are, they gather.
I think that's really important because they did an experiment with rats. And they got some rats that had access to water and access to a drug that was in another bottle. And if the rats were solitary, if there's only one rat in a cage, the rat will become it will favor the water that's laced with the drug. Maybe because the rat is bored out of its head. I don't know.
Always looking for another person,
Or it is
so they'll find one.
But if you put them in a group, they do not bother the drug water. If it's a group that's a cohesive group, they will drink just the water.
And then that goes to what you're talking about when we started with this, how are we reaching out to the rest of the community? If we, in some small way, this is not a direct, this is one way to stop addiction, but especially when you're in poverty, you think there's a lot of lonely people out in this world.
Yes.
In this county.
And that's-
maybe that's a good idea to periodically leave something for the people that use this building.
Couldn't hurt.
No. Would we need for Lisa to contact them and let them know that we may be leaving them some things, so they know that it's for them,
That it's for them.
that it's for them?
Yeah.
Or we could put a note in it and say,
Yeah.
we're thinking of you.
Yeah.
Which might help. So if we look at all this perception of drugs, it says marijuana is one which is changing. The perception is changing. Why?
It's become medical for glaucoma, for chemotherapy patients.
Okay.
I would have, if my mother had taken for her cancer, and she was in extreme pain, and she had what was called MS Contin, but it was an opioid. And, but if she had decided to have treatment, which she did not have, but if she had decided to do that, and I thought marijuana would have helped her, I would have done everything I could to get some for her, to help her. So,
And now that is available as a drug.
But not in all states.
Not in all states. And in some states you get put in jail.
I would have.
And so the laws are really all over the place. In some places, if you're with someone who uses marijuana, you can be charged at the same time. So it's, yes. And going to jail or going to prison, what does that do to your ability to
Well, you can't
get
vote.
over your drug addiction?
And then it limits some of your involvement from then on, once you've been in jail. You can't vote anymore.
But it limits your drug use for a short period, maybe. But then when you get out,
There's an economy in the prison system.
As my friends, both friends' families made the comment that when they got out, their friends would not leave them alone. And I would probably say both of them had become gainfully employed or succeeding again, had money, and their friends wouldn't leave them alone.
they didn't have an alternative, did they?
Well,
She started
actually,
both of them.
both of them did. They were doing well. So there's something about that draw. I told Mary said, I've asked so-and-so to promise he'll never do that again, and he promised he wouldn't. And when he got out, I said, do not try to exact promises from him. I said, it is a day-to-day struggle. You can encourage him, but don't try to exact promises from him. It's impossible.
You know, this is many times genetic. And you know, you always think of the Irish, the Indian, who couldn't process alcohol. Japanese, some other ethnic groups that are, I didn't see it.
That's
Just
right. They, like it used to be a sign of some kind of distinction of manhood if you could hold your liquor. You know,
Yeah.
guys who would drink
Yeah,
more and more, but still walk around.
yeah. My grandmother used to say this, nothing worse than a drunk man than a drunk woman. And so you find a lot of these housewives, whose husbands are out in business.
It's nice
And they
to
start
know we
taking
hold
on
women to a
next,
higher
you know?
standard than we do men.
But see, we have, at that point, what have we done? We have stigmatized their behavior. If you're drunk, doesn't that put a picture in your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you watch that video, I think you will see that what we're talking about now is the opioid crisis, because so many people die who use opioids. And what is the problem there?
It's getting stronger and stronger.
There's fentanyl, there's other forms of the opioids which are stronger, and they are extremely addictive. So, if you go to your doctor and you have a minor pain, what should you try to avoid?
Drugs like that.
Well, you should avoid anything that has an opioid background if you can.
That includes codeine.
Mm-hmm. But the problem now is that there is no guarantee if you're taking illegally the opioids. This is a list of them: oxycodone, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, fentanyl, codeine, and morphine. Those are all opioids, common prescription opioids. So if you had a bad bout of some illness and you had prescription and you took it carefully and you started out with 15 pills and you've got 5 left, what do you do with the 5 that you've got left?
Save it for a rainy day.
Don't throw it away.
Don't throw them away.
No.
Don't flush them.
Oh,
Especially unless you're on a septic system, but even then, I probably wouldn't flush them. Take them to a take back.
Where is
Any
the take
pharmacy
back?
will take them back.
I have got
Any
some.
pharmacy will take them back.
And you can also take them up to the town hall.
Oh, really?
A lot of police and sheriff's departments will take them.
I have some at my house and I didn't know
I'll be
what
right
to
there.
do with them, and I'm not saving them for a rainy day, John. But they were left over from some surgery I had, you know, and I stopped and I had, I don't know how many's in there, but I've got them put carefully away. Nobody in my house would know where in the world they are. But I didn't know you could take them to town hall. I bet you could take them over here to the clinic too. I bet they would just disperse them.
Well, Sharon was cleaning my house.
Okay.
So
She found some stuff.
She ended up with a whole slew of stuff that we took to the town hall.
Okay.
Mhm.
I bet Paul Dempsey would take care of anything like that if we wanted to get rid
So
of it.
why should you care about those things? Well, if you have grandchildren in
Yes,
the house,
yes.
you should care.
Let me say another thing about that. No matter, we talk about all these issues, and always there's an economic thread in everything. And when I had my operation, stomach operation in '93, I had all these pills, but I didn't take them. They were prescribed and I had them. And somebody found out, I don't know, maybe when I was at work, and I found out who the drug dealer was, because he wanted to buy those pills off me. And I didn't even know that kind of thing was going on.
Oh, yes.
So there's another reason to get rid of them, just because of the economics that goes on. You know, for me personally, I don't find any fault with somebody that's addicted. I find fault with the person who's trying to own that person.
Who's making money off that?
Yes. I'm gonna take everything out. You can become a criminal, but I want that money. And I got you.
Okay, so last thing, let's talk just a minute about accidental overdose. What if a person is using those drugs and either gets a stronger dose than expected, or when he or she's under the influence, takes another pill because you didn't quite get to where you needed to be with the first pill. So what is our responsibility to try to prevent or help people who might have taken too much?
Call the doctor, I wouldn't know what to do.
I wouldn't know what to do.
Narcan, Narcan, is that what you call it?
No, Narcan is a drug that they use to.
Yeah.
Available, apparently.
You go to the medical center.
Call 911.
Yes,
But
yes.
You need to act fast.
Yeah.
And they need to give the antidote, which is Narcan, and that can be either a nose spray kind of treatment or a shot.
It's a shot.
And the shot is, of course, what the paramedics would do, which is sure, but should a church have available the nasal spray?
Sure.
I didn't know they had measles.
I don't know.
But I know that you
I
have to
have
start
mixed
CPR
emotions
pretty
about
quickly,
that.
'cause they're gonna
It
stop
would be
breathing.
a good Samaritan thing where you might be held liable or anything.
Yeah, you're not held liable.
And why not, you know?
I think so too.
Jesus was all about healing, that would be healing someone.
With the distance we are from EMS and the distance we are from the closest hospital and hosting AA and NA here,
We should. I mean,
I think we
it's not a
should
big
too.
deal.
Well, I've never even thought about that because I have never felt like, when you said what is our responsibility, I have never felt that that was our responsibility. But if something were to happen in our church, I would call 911 because I would not know how to administer any of these things or whether it was safe or if it was the right thing to do.
But if
It
you
is
wait,
safe. I mean, it isn't gonna hurt anything if you
No.
gave it to somebody who didn't need it. It isn't gonna hurt.
Okay.
it's not addictive itself. It's
Yeah.
it knocks the opiates opiates off the brain's receptors, allowing the person who has overdosed to breathe again. It is not addictive. And the distribution of Narcan has shown to cause a 50% drop in overdose fatalities.
Now, hopefully you all know CPR, so we'll be ready to administer it just for 911.
We used to do too. We used to have, we had one person who trained members of the congregation who were interested in doing CPR. I think it would not hurt for us, and I took that class, and I'm not sure I could have saved anybody, but I thought it would be a good thing to know if you had an emergency in the family.
I took a class many years ago when I was teaching, because I felt like I needed to know how to do that. I think I remember how, but
Yeah.
I'm not positive, you know. A refresher might be.
Maybe I was just gonna say that we needed to. How much do those cost?
Hey, Connie, we have
A couple
trustee,
thousand.
trustee meeting Monday night,
But there might be grants available for
so
it.
we should bring that up.
Yeah. No, you could call Red Cross, and they would come, you know, with the dummy bag, thing, an adult and a child, and get us up to, because it's changed a lot. You know, it used to be 2 breaths and then 5, 2, now it's just all boom, boom, boom. Into the heart.
Oh, well, it's very different then.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You don't have to put your mouth on the person.
Oh, you don't?
We should investigate the possibilities, because ignorance is not a good excuse.
You do,
Yeah.
but not adults.
We might be able to, I don't know if I'm sure they've done it with churches in different places, but we might be able to explore, just given how many of us weren't aware that you could take back drugs to, I assume it's the police department at the town hall, but we might be able to partner with either the police department and or the sheriff's department to see if we can host like a take back event, like one Saturday or Sunday afternoon or something of that nature, to have something out front and sort of the roundabout driveway to have it where people could drive through. The sheriff's office would be here and or the police office. And to be able to put it in their disposal container, but to have something that raises some awareness about that.
Have to clean house.
I missed something. Why can't you throw it just in the trash?
Somebody can get it. When I was a hospice nurse, when I was a hospice nurse, I had all kinds of pain medication. And when the patient died, I wasn't a hospice nurse, it was just an RN. When the patient died, the hospice nurse came in, and she had a box of dirt, right? And she took all the pain medication, dumped it all in the dirt. The box, like that, took it away.
So nobody can take it.
Might have been charcoal in there that inactivated the medication.
Yeah.
Kitty litter box,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Kill your cat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you doing before next Sunday?
You don't really
Are you
want to
gonna
know.
watch, are you gonna watch this little
Got a
short
busy
thing? It's
week.
quite good.
Yes,
So do that.
Where is that?
YouTube.
It's on a podcast TED Talk.
But
a TED
it's
Talk.
also available on, YouTube. So you don't have
Okay.
to have the podcast.
Okay.
So what do you key in? Your title there?
Yeah.
Everything you know about addiction is wrong?
Yeah. Okay, are you going to think about what you have in your house
Yes.
in terms of drugs? And
See you tomorrow.
A couple of announcements in terms of what's coming up over the next couple of weeks, including this week. So I think trustees know they have a meeting Monday night, 7 p.m. Tuesday is the
Methodist women.
United Methodist Women, open to everyone, regardless of gender, going on the guided tour of Mars Hills Anderson Rosenwald School.
And we need to be, I didn't get with you, Connie, you've got to be here we're gonna leave the church at 11:15 because
Yes.
Will is supposed to start speaking at 11:30, so if we
Yeah.
carpool from
Yeah.
leave, Connie's gonna lead the group over there and she's
Yeah.
gonna hit the gas at 11:15.
Yes,
So
11:15, we leave from the church, we'll carpool out to the Rosenwald School. And that should be a very, Tuesday.
Monday's the trustee meeting, Tuesday's the.
And that should be a really interesting program. If you haven't been out there, come and participate. You will be amazed at what's been done and the story of the Rosenwald School.
5:30 on, Monday, Joanne's gonna have her book thing.
That's
Probably
right.
to say.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because if you were planning to come to that, it's not in the,
Library?
it's not in the Ramsey Center,
No,
it's
it's
in the
Science
nursing,
Building.
the nursing
Oh,
building, which is directly opposite the science building.
right,
How do I say?
okay. At
Where
5:30,
in there?
I'm going to
Unit
that.
306.
That third floor then, 306, okay, at 5:30? While we're announcing things, this afternoon at 3 o'clock in the auditorium, one of the young men who participates with our music program has his senior recital.
Yes,
Organ.
In Moore Auditorium.
Organ recital.
This
Nick.
afternoon.
Nick,
That's Nick.
yes, that's today.
Today is the deadline if you would like to, so our church Christmas party is two-part. The first part is a potluck after, not the third Sunday, but the second Sunday in December. So we'll have a potluck in this space. Rifle Laurel is going to come over after their worship and join us for a potluck. And then at 2 p.m. we're going over to see one of Sart's.
It starts at 2, so we'll have to go a little prior.
So we'll probably try and wrap up here around 1:15 to get over to the theater. It's a Southern Appalachian Christmas, and I believe this is the premiere of that.
Yes, yeah.
And tickets are $30, so that's a little bit of a discount, but if you can let either Patty or Connie or me know today how many are coming in your party.
And you can give your money to me and I will make a list just like we did last year. And then, your seats will be reserved. And you know what? I know we said today was the deadline. That's not until December the 11th. We can go another week on that because some people might have been caught not knowing and not prepared to give $30 today. But let's say next week. By next Sunday, bring your money and I will collect it, I will make a list, and your seat will be reserved at Owen Theater.
I tried to use that email link on the thing, or the website thing, whatever it was on, even on, it wouldn't take my email, I don't know why.
Well, a lot of people are having trouble with that. So if you'll go through Patty and me, we will assure you of that. And then if you want to go to the gala that SART is having the first Sunday afternoon, and it's a fundraiser. So it's $50 a plate, but there are going to be nice door prizes. There's going to be a lovely dinner, seated dinner over at Mars Landing Gallery in the afternoon at 4 o'clock on December it's the first Sunday in December. Is that the 4th or 5th?
I think it's the 4th, I'm not sure though.
Okay, but it's from 4 to 7 on that Sunday afternoon, and it's a fundraiser. Now that, you can also buy that from me, or you can go to the box office, or people are having trouble buying that online, but I'll be sure that you have a ticket if you choose to go to that. A Southern Appalachian Repertory Theater, or SART, S-A-R-T.
Just put what?
Yeah.
Do you have to change?
Do I have change? Well, Lord, no, I don't have change. Let's see.
$1,000 bill there.
How much money you got?
Benjamin Franklin's on it.
I don't know, I might
I like
have
to
some
check.
change. Let's see.
Who is this guy on this thing? Does anybody know?
Great.
Yeah,
Make it out to Sark, Connie.
Make it out to Sark, yes.
I'll just make him Jack.
Are you sure?
If you wanna get rid of
Okay.
that, you may, let me know.
Do y'all wanna, you wanna do that next week?
Yeah.
Can you